So yeah, chapter 2. Um, this one I I felt good about reading because of how she starts talking about the history um, with these communities that came about and these financial institutions and businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And she started off the chapter saying, because race was used as a political weapon to marginalize and exploit Blacks, race also created a vibrant community.
Mm-hmm.
So she started talking about these mutual aid societies and fraternal societies, which ended up providing essential um, services, and that churches were kind of like the foundation that hosted these social and economic institutions. But I saw that it kind of led to the demise of the funding, because they were trying to, I think they were taking on a really huge task with trying to fund so many different social programs in the community.
At the same time.
So I think that was a really, really, really tall order. Right. And then when you read some more and you see that the reason why they had to do that was because the banking really wasn't connecting for them with how they were trying to put their money into giving them to white store owners who eventually screwed them over because they became jealous or whatever.
Right.
And they started saying they needed to create their own banks, um, so that the white people wouldn't have any information about their activities. So basically, this is kind of where all this is coming from. But do you think that she was valid in saying that no matter what they came up with as far as the banking, that it wouldn't be sustainable if it was not connected to one of the white banks?
I think she wasn't valid, but she was for certain banks where they were the only black bank, and that in that state or in that area. Yeah, you would have had to connect. But like with Maggie, what was her name? Maggie Walker.
Mm-hmm.
Like she merged two other banks within her bank, two other black owned banks within her bank, so that they could survive. So if you have, I feel like those banks were within reach of her. So if you have that kind of connection with other black banks, you can make it. But if they were by themselves, you're right, they wouldn't have sustained it. They wouldn't have been able to make it through those scares, oppressions, that you know, by themselves. Because you can't just, unfortunately, you can't just be alone out there by yourself like that. Like, not as an institution, because you need to sell off. Like you said, it's a run. Put a bank under. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't have, white banks didn't choose to bail them out or anything because their investments were risky and all of that. So yeah, you do need in those situations white support. But in others, you don't. If you would have had more than one kind of black bank near you, I think you could have made it without white support.
Mm.
Personally,
I don't know. I mean, I feel like on a grand scale, if you're talking about like, are you talking about today or like at the time that it happened?
At
Like,
the
because this,
time it happened.
you're talking about the time that it happened?
Mm-hmm. Because I'm trying to figure out, I see where she's going with it, but then I'm like, is this the real reason, or is there some other underlying factor that was the
Oh, as to
case?
why it wasn't successful?
Right.
I think that it's probably both. That's how I feel. Like
Mhm.
maybe I don't think that we have the full story, you know. I feel like because it just I don't know. It seems like there was a lot of entrepreneurship and a lot of cohesion in the Black community at that time in terms of trying to work collectively and pool our money in terms of trying to build ourselves up within the
Mhm.
society. But I can see the logic behind if we are only servicing our own community with our money and we don't have access to bigger amounts, you know, to be able to be a bigger fish, then I can see how it would just be limited. Like, you know,
Right.
if we don't have the wealth that the white community has, or even I'm sure the other immigrant groups were probably going with the white banks, you know, because so
Mhm.
I think that that just worked against us because we're dealing with smaller amounts of money. And then there was probably seems like there's some shady dealings kind of somewhere in here too. I'm not sure.
Right.
Right. We weren't getting a lot
I
of,
agree with you
yeah,
With
we
the
weren't getting a lot of
management
return
because
on
money.
investment.
one of the things, right? It seems like we were trying to help ourselves, but then we start being our own worst enemy because one of the things she talked about with how um, they made loan decisions based on factors having less to do with good underwriting and more to do with community need or pressure from well-intentioned leaders or clergy who were often unaware of bank operations. So it's basically like, you know, we're cool and I
Right.
support you, so you need to go ahead and give me this loan.
Right.
Um, which, you know, I'm not saying that that's wrong because we, of course, we know that happens with white banks all the time. It's about the relationship that they have. They're able to
Right.
go and get this money, but this just wasn't something that we could sustain based on where we were at that point in time.
Right.
So yes.
But the white people, that's more of the well, they have the established base. So I think they have more capital to do that kind of stuff, to take a
Right,
risk on their homeboy or
right.
whatever. But I have seen this overarching thing kind of like, it's not, I don't want to diss the Black community, but sometimes I feel like our level of business and professionalism gets, you know, it just gets, it gets, you know, cloudy in terms of being like this whole connection with the church and the, you know, the clergy and
Mm-hmm,
letting them have the power. And it's like, this is business. This should just be straight up
mm-hmm.
business, not, you know, even, I mean, I'm sure you're going to get into it later, but even some of these at the time, I'm feeling like I need to go and look into some of these leaders a little bit more thoroughly.
Right, right, right,
In
right.
particular, Booker T. Washington.
Oh, don't even get me started. You know, it's so funny. No, I was laughing when I started reading because almost every book, and this is the first time I ever saw the contrast in between their thought process and their approaches was when I
Mhm.
read the book about the race riots in Atlanta that happened that people don't
Okay.
really talk
When were
about.
those?
And oh, this was the 19, I want to say 1920s. Hold on. Because
Okay.
I didn't even know. Like this was a book I read like maybe 2 years ago. And
Okay.
wasn't even aware that it happened because it's just something. No, okay, I lied. It was 1906.
Okay.
1906.
Okay.
Yeah,
So right around that time though, when they're
but
getting,
that whole book just, yeah, that whole book just showed the difference in their approach, and it's so funny because it's it's more of pitting them against each other with the way they were doing things. And when I started reading this book and I saw that she had that in there, I was like, oh, so this is
You know,
connecting the dots um with
mm-hmm.
how that was. So it's
Right.
pretty interesting.
no, you are
Yeah.
now
So yeah, they have. Hmm?
you are referring to W.B. Du Bois, right? About Booker T. Washington.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
W.B. Du Bois and
yeah,
Booker T.
I was referring to Booker T. Washington, but yeah, they talk about both of them, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm in between doing my vision board and listening to y'all, so you all will get little participation. I'm back and forth.
Oh no. It's okay.
That's
But
fine.
we're gonna talk about that too. But yeah, you're right, because that was I was like, oh, here we go with this again.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the difference between a commercial bank and a, what do they call it, a social bank or something like that.
Private.
But
Mm-hmm.
oh, in a private bank, okay. But I know that they said, a lot of black banks were funded by the community. So that's community money that you have to keep supporting. So when it was time, like for a depression or a scare, like if you can't get money from your members, you're gonna go under. Like, and if you, even before then, like if you weren't giving out loans to your members, they would stop supporting you. No matter what, that bank was kind of put in a bad position. So
It
you
was
didn't
put in
give,
that position because even that, given that bank and the one that Maggie Walker started, they did a lot. It said that they helped customers buy 600 homes.
right.
During a time when mortgage loans were really, really rare.
Right.
And they even survived, the Great Depression and 2 World Wars, but ultimately folded in 2008 because of the financial crisis. So that one actually stood the test of time, but I believe it did because she ended up connecting with the Virginia Bank. It said that she was the first person to become a part of she was extending membership into the Virginia Bankers Association. So I believe that may have played a part in, how they were able to be sustainable and survive during that time, because they did have a relationship, that connection with the other white banks.
Banking, right.
I didn't think about that, but yeah. And white banks had access to not only capital, probably government funding and stuff like that. So
they did. Yeah. Because she made that connection with their backing in the first chapter. So yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Hold up, y'all don't have to bear with me because I be flipping through here and forgetting that this book is on my phone.
I know it's on my phone. It's harder when it's on the phone, right? To find stuff. You'd be like, hold on.
Right. But I think what also kind of led to that demise, aside from that safe banking, is that it was just to the point where nobody really trusted financial institutions anymore because they had been burned a couple of times, with the Freedmen's Bank and even these other Black institutions they had faith in, but they ultimately folded because they were kind of in a losing position with, I'm not going to support you if you don't give me the money that I need, type situation, and just not having the funding when something went wrong as well. So I think that, and I think that even translates over to today about why a lot of there's a high percentage of Black people that don't even have their money. What do you think? Something that, there's a high percentage of Black people that still don't even have their money in banks.
They keep it outside of banks because of the mistrust of the system.
Or because they got their credit messed up and they can't get a bank account. I know people like that, but
you all do know that banks use our money to create more money.
Yeah. Of course.
And that's why we were saying that the Black banks were at a disadvantage because we don't, because I think we were locked out of certain segments of that whole banking system, we could only rise so high, because we were limited in our scope. I thought it was interesting when they started
Right.
talking about Booker T. Washington. And I just have this sneaking, like this feeling that he was, I mean, I don't even know if this is true at all. I'm just going to speak just freely. I just feel like on some level, he was like double dealing in a way or complicit in something in a way, because he's pushing this idea that Black people need to own, that through acquiring wealth, we'll get equality. That if a Black man has money, he won't have to deal with racism anymore because, money will speak to the fact that he's kind of now deserving of equal rights. And then it's like, in the years that follow this kind of trend, this mindset that he's promoting, he establishes a national Negro business league, and he has Andrew Carnegie giving him money. I'm kind of just wondering, why? And then they say that, what's the other two guys? Carnegie and Rockefeller were in line with him and liked his policies and the fact that he wasn't pursuing, the vote in terms of just freely going after it immediately. He liked the fact that he had this wise policy, he said, of Blacks being practical and thrifty. And I'm just kind of wondering what's up with all of that. If that stood out to anybody else.
Oh no, it definitely did. And like I said before with the other book that I was reading, and this is what got me when it said Washington's program building a segregated Black business economy was exactly the agenda favored by the white Republican political establishment and Northern industrialists. And it said it wasn't just his submissive stance that appealed to wealthy capitalists like Carnegie and Rockefeller, but also his complete faith in their gospel of prosperity. Where have we heard that before? Which held that free market capitalism, property ownership, and bootstrap entrepreneurship was the one and only path toward equality, prosperity, and personal virtue.
That's what I mean.
Right.
And at that time, he has Andrew Carnegie giving him $2,700 a year and comparing him to Moses, calling him the Moses and Jehovah of his people. I'm just kind of wondering why.
But what got me, and I think he was double dealing. Well, not only because of what this book said, but what was because of the other book said. It seemed like he was literally selling us up the river, type thing. And it's so funny when she put that gospel of prosperity in parentheses, because it made me think about these churches now that is like their whole thing, prosperity preaching, the prosperity gospel. And that, I think that came about from that idea as well. So it's still, present today, where, if you get a certain amount of money, you be equal with the white man and the white man accept you.
Right.
And at the end of the day, like Jay-Z said, you still a nigga to them.
Well, as soon as they did what he said, it caused a complete backlash. So there, a bunch of businesses spring up. We've got some banks on the scene where, I'm not going to hop ahead to the end of the chapter, but as soon as we do all of that, they just completely start losing it.
Oh yeah,
come
in and burn it down.
Yeah.
Like,
and so I'm
but
just, Washington was involved in that bank too, right? Didn't they bring him in as president? Was that the other book?
No. They didn't bring him in as president of this one. That was Frederick Douglass. They brought in as president.
Frederick Douglass. Okay, right. Okay. I was gonna throw that on Washington.
But no, like, you're right though, because it's deeply embedded. Like, we kept saying, what do people do now as Black people? We say we gotta own a home, right?
Right.
Not just any home, but it's got to be a 2-story home,
Right.
right? This is where that thinking level of thinking comes from. So it's heavily embedded.
I think Booker
Even today.
was. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think he was just naive in a way, like they were saying. But I think from his standpoint, now mind you, I don't know too much about him personally, like I should. But from what I've read in the chapter, going off of it alone, it looks like he observed that men with money had power, and he applied that. But it was really only white people, and maybe one select black, like if that. But so I feel like he was just trying to apply that. He's like, okay, I see that these white men can come up through the ranks. I see like a poor white man come up through the ranks through bootstrap thing, mentality, and money, power, like that or whatever. So if he can do it from a poor white and get to be like the top with money, then so can we. The white man won't see color, they'll just see money, because that's what makes the world turn. But he highly underestimated the Jim Crow South. He underestimated racism, and I think in the end, that's what he was. I don't know if he was playing both sides or not. I just think he was misguided.
To me, he didn't even try to change the level, the appearance of the packaging, because it's basically the same stuff that they were spewing it as.
Right.
You got to be able to put yourselves up by your bootstraps, and he's just saying the same thing. But I guess we're supposed to accept it because he's black and it's coming from him.
Right.
But I think he might have honestly believed that. That's what I'm saying. Like he saw the white man do it, and he assumed that we could do it too. But I think he overestimated the value of money to white people versus their hatred for us. I just think that's what he did.
Right.
What no.
And plus, I think he was being treated differently. So it could have been kind of, a byproduct of that. The fact that accepted and respected in a certain way when he's around white people. So he might think that treatment would go across the board to anyone who was educated and wealthy that was black, not that he's a special case. And white people do that today. They make special cases.
In the process of encouraging and advocating for wealth building and wealth creation in our communities, Booker T. Washington forgot that white supremacy and America were only able to build wealth at your expense. That's what he forgot.
Right.
Now, also, and this is something that Malcolm X said in the interview, that a lot of times when white liberals are leading our communities, or when we have certain people in our communities that are speaking on our behalf, that a lot of times it's because they're being used by someone else for their agenda to govern us. And I think that may have been the case with Andrew Carnegie. Because I'm not gonna lie to you all, Think and Grow Rich is my all-time favorite book, even better than Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice. And that book was because of Andrew Carnegie commissioning Napoleon Hill to go on what would take him 20 years to complete. But I think, but I believe at the time, I don't know what Andrew Carnegie's motive was. I know Rockefeller, I don't think had the best motive at heart, because of some more stuff I won't get into. But anyway, that's just my outlook on it.
It honestly never made sense to me that some whites would agree that when I was reading that, would agree that we should have a separate, economy, separate, everything, because that's money leaving y'all system. And then it showed later that there were people who just didn't want us to have that. Like, we were supposed to be their labor. So they disagree with that as well. But yeah, it was still kind of weird to me that white people would support us having our own something. I still don't understand the purpose for them. I don't. Did they want us so separately that they just agreed to it as long as we kept our money to ourselves and they kept theirs to themselves, or what?
I don't know. I just know that it seems to me that they have a deep-seated issue with
Mm-hmm.
Black people. They have a deep-seated issue that goes beyond money. Money is one part of it, wealth, money, power, but they've got another issue with us that's not talked about, because it's
Mm-hmm.
clear that we have been fine with being separate. You see during the early 1900s, just the
Right.
boom in Black businesses. So everything they're saying about us being, subhuman and close to apes, and the fakes, phrenology, whatever they're talking about with the brain size, when everyone knows that Black people are genetically superior. But we never feel the need to be like, oh, we're superior. Our skin doesn't, break down in the sun. We've got melanin and it protects us, and we are physically dominant. You look at the sports industry, I mean, everything, you know what I mean? It's like, it's obvious. So to me, they brought us here, to work and be, under them because of some mixed thing of a love-hate thing with us. They want us around, but they don't want us, they have some hatred for us at the same time, because otherwise you wouldn't have all this violence when we were just kind of prospering on our own, building businesses, getting Black banks, and, you know, just kind of like having our separate societies, taking the jobs from slavery, like cooking or farming, and making our own businesses out of these kind of skill sets. And it seems like that just angered them, because he talks first about the Irish and the German immigrants coming for the businesses in the North and driving them out, even though they were offering, basically menial services. And that they started riots and drove them out of the North because they were angry.
Right.
Mm. Hey, Monique.
Yeah. It's
Hey, everybody.
I think
Hi.
um oh, hey Monique. I think that's kind of the contrast in between his way of thinking and Dubois' way of thinking. Like, um, when he was, he's all about staying separate and Black people having their own institutions. And on the other hand,
Right.
Dubois is like, we need to fight for integration and for legal rights. Which he thought without that we never have that equality. And he was urging Black people to, mobilize and act against their continued oppression, and rejecting the idea that Southern whites will ever grant Blacks equal rights without continued political and legal pressure, right? So he denounced the Black community's belief in wealth as a remedy for every social ill, which I think we are of that mentality, that we think that the more money that we have, these problems will just go away. But, he was advocating for Black cooperative enterprise with a focus on community building as opposed to profit maximizing, right? And I think that it showed when she was talking about how, of course, Black people had their own businesses, but their only customers were other Black people, right?
Right.
And what does that do for you if you're still having to get your supplies from the white man, or are you competing with not only just Black businesses, but other white businesses that are doing the same thing that you're doing, as well as what, and this is something that was funny to me, as well as when you're getting swindled sometimes by your own people. Because she talks about that one guy that had that business that bought what was it, for the teachers at a discount.
Oh,
And
Lord,
then,
that was so shady, the funeral guy.
right.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it be your own people. Like, how do you?
Gaston, right? That was Gaston. He bought the state issued script for that the Black teachers were being
It
paid
be your own people.
at 50%. Yeah, and then sold it at full value.
Oh.
Shady.
Right. So it's like
True
you
business.
can't
That's
you
true
can't
business.
win for losing.
Hey, Alan.
Hey, how you
Alan
doing?
said.
You can't take it like
Oh
I
man.
mean that's just a shrewd business practice, and that's pretty much universal. So they also talked about how
Mm,
it's like you feel almost like you expect to get looked out for because you're dealing with your own. You know what I'm saying?
mhm.
It's like
Mm,
it's
Right.
predetermined mindset that are you supposed to look out for me, which is very prevalent today. Uh, I'm a barber. I got my own. I just acquired my own business, and you know, I was kind of. I don't come from a long line of barbers, so I wasn't as disheartened as I was at first when I was reading. And they was talking about how the barbers came from the house, quote unquote, servants. You know, I almost took offense to it because I always looked at myself as a field cat, but my chosen profession, you know what I mean? My chosen profession come out the house. So, but like I said, I'm not from a long line of barbers. So I guess it doesn't affect me in that way. But just being around like my clientele, you know, certain clientele feel they should be afforded certain privileges, which I get because of they time with me. Like I've been cutting certain people for 30 years. I cut their
mm,
kids, cut their grandkids. So I got a pretty good clientele that I've maintained through a lot of trials and tribulations. But at the same time, certain people do sort of think like you're supposed to look out. Like I'm
right.
going through a pandemic now, and although I'm allowing certain people to come to my house, it's a lot of people I'm not allowing inside my home, you
Right.
know? And I have to make that distinction. And sometimes, especially in business, when you're trying to move forward and you're trying to progress, sometimes you have to make some of those hard decisions. I mean, it was kind of ill how he came at them teachers like, you know, but I mean, wow. I mean, woo, at the end of the day, we all basically up against it. So, but I don't know. I get it though. But everything is a
Mhm.
process. So just to be able to be in that position was
Right.
progress in and of itself, though, right?
Right. I mean,
Right. That is
he is
true.
being a good
Very
businessman.
true.
If they're gonna do it, you know what I mean, then it's like he's building his little empire. You can't hate on that, you know?
Right. Now he did redeem himself. I will say that because he's ended up being one of the biggest uh contributors to some of the civil rights
Right.
um
Oh,
Policy.
movement, yeah, policies and stuff. So I will give him that. Even though he ripped everybody off, I guess he
Gave back, he gave back.
he went back into the community. But yeah. Um what else we want to talk about?
So the who do y'all agree with more, WEB or Booker T?
well,
I think
I,
it takes a combination of both.
I was just about to say a combination of both.
Mm,
It's just the fact that WEB Du Bois was right about it. It really didn't matter if we acquired, although he was a strong advocate for wealth, that alone wasn't going to stop anything. And I think a lot of times we forget about that even in the process, because I have millionaire mentors that I know personally. There's some of which are the best and brightest in Black America, and they'll tell you that it's really not like that. Like
Right.
the guy out of St. Louis, you may or may not have heard of. Matter of fact, he and his brother that owns like more than half of St. Louis, the Roberts brothers. They'll tell. There was a podcast episode where they'll tell you that people approached him and just asking because they saw that something named after him. He was like, "Well, do you own that as well?" And Michael V. Roberts was like, "You're not saying that to Trump, the Rockefeller, or the Walt Disney. So why are you saying it to me?" That just was a summarization of what he said.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think people do have that. They're under the illusion that once you get the money, everything else just stops.
Now,
And
now
you
I
get
will,
accepted to the
Definitely
club.
not the case.
but I will say this though, that certain people in our community, like what happened to George Floyd and what happened to other blacks, certain people, white supremacy will not pull that on because of their economic power. You don't see that happening to the Nation of Islam. What happened to George Floyd?
What you mean?
What
Yeah,
I
I was
mean,
like,
all right, so what I mean is this, because this is something Stephen A. Smith said. Stephen A. Smith said that when he got pulled over the police officers and he had his daughter in the back seat and they were aggressive and behaving irrationally with him as they were questioning him. But when they realized who he was, they backed off.
yeah, I mean, but still, he still got the treatment until they realized who he was,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
So,
I'm saying he got the treatment, but I'm talking about as far as the physical
yeah,
altercation, the harassment, the being beat down in the street. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, but here's the thing: white supremacy will they'll find other ways to attack you or bring you down if they can't do it physically on camera.
Right, because they can go
right,
after you financially or block jobs or
Yeah.
something like that.
And another
Okay.
thing is like how they was talking about, even though like Tulsa, it was blatant what they did, and I think they said Durham. I think he was talking about how Durham pretty much survived it, but as blatant as what they did in Tulsa, it was subtle how they did it when they put the freeway through the whole community and
right.
ruined that. They did the same thing, I believe, in DC also. They just, they just disregard our community. You know what I'm saying? It's like they would sacrifice our community to benefit theirs. And that's another way they like
Mm-hmm.
to do it. And just to know how all the allotments of land and stuff that was granted to other peoples other than us, and how, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I mean, like we talked about this last week also. I mean, this is like, we call it systemic, but yeah, this is well thought of. This is well thought of things that they do purposefully. And when
Right.
we wonder why we get treated like this, is so much deeper than just, it's not even like a racial thing. It's really a survival thing. You got to realize, white people only make up 9% of the world population, so they are really the minority. To them,
Right.
this is life or death. This, to them, they look at it really as survival. This is, you know what I mean?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They are recessive. Ours is dominant. We are dominant.
Right.
So I mean, this is in their psyche. This go back thousands of years. Because the way they had to compete
Mm-hmm.
just to get, you know what I'm saying? They had to compete. When they was having the Flintstones, we was living like kings. And they was at the Stone Age. That's
Right.
they don't show you the other neighborhood past Bedrock. We was in the suburbs. Bedrock was like the game, you know what I mean? I'm trying to tell you this. But I'm saying this is built in their psyche. So they look at us, we the dominant. And so, and all from that comes all this, I mean, that the things that's going on now has it's a direct correlation to they basically their survival instinct, which is prevalent amongst everything that lives. Its basic purpose is to live and pass on. You know what I'm saying? They losing what they say, the population, they're gonna be a minority by 2045 in America.
Mm-hmm.
That's just America.
Right.
But like I said, worldwide, they're already a minority. So this is something that they grapple with, and they concerned about literally their extinction. So they go by a lot of certain means to to stop, to thwart that for as long as they possibly can. And that's a serious thing that nobody talks about. And that's true. I mean, that's deep. I mean, but that's like that goes all the way to the core, a lot of the stuff that they come up with that you can't understand. How can somebody act this way towards certain other people? What is the purpose? And it's just a lot, it just gets deeper and deeper.
Yeah, they don't want to disappear. They don't want to disappear.
Right.
They know
are
they are gone.
Right. But I think that's what we saw a lot with this last election cycle. It didn't even have anything to do with Trump. It was about keeping white supremacy alive.
That's right.
Basically, that's what
everybody was shocked. It was more people voted. Yeah, because it's man, you can't put that back in the bottle. It's out. But I mean, we know it.
Right.
We know it. But it's like white people, because they'll say this and that, but they'll vote. They're gonna still vote for Trump. I mean, that's what they say. What was they t-shirt of the week? He says what I think. That was one of their favorite t-shirts. You know what I'm saying? Man, I mean, I ain't judging everybody, but I'm just telling you, if 70 million people voted for this cat, I mean, this is white people that think the ACA and Obamacare is two different things. You know what I'm saying? They don't know that. They don't know that this benefit. They would rather go without having their teeth fixed if they know a nigga can't get his fixed.
Right.
This is the mentality that a lot of them have. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna tell you one thing, because it's almost football time and I play fantasy football. This old guy I used to cut, he migrated up here to Buffalo from down south. And he said before he left his job, the white boss told him, he said, the only thing I like black is a Cadillac. The only thing I like fat is a pig. And I'd rather see a hog with a gold tooth than a nigga with a dime.
Where was this guy from? What part of the South?
And I was
Not that it matters. Not that it matters, because the South is just racist, period. But what part of the South?
It ain't just the South. It ain't just the South. But I'm telling you, the South will let you know. That's why I ain't got no problem.
That's why I said. That's why I said it like that.
Yeah, but yeah, man. But hey, thanks for the discussion. I got to get to my football. My Buffalo Bills is about to play.
It's all good. Nice talking with you.
Thank you for the comedic relief.
All right, us too.
All right, enjoy y'all Sunday and God bless.
I bet.
All right.
You too. Bye.
I will say I did underestimate the power of white supremacy in 2020, and it didn't hit me until the election where 70 million people. I said, "You got to be kidding me! Why is it even this close? Why are we even having this conversation?" And now I'm looking at these ads that white lady, I don't know her name, the one I think running against Warnock. Some of these things I'm seeing them put out, I said, you can't even stand up. Yeah, like you can't even stand on principle. You got to try to attack him, use what he says about, take bits and pieces and try to mesh it together. Like he's trying to destroy the white man and stuff. Like, yeah, like, he was talking about let our brothers and sisters go, the mass incarceration, all this stuff. Like their ads are so racist to me. I'm just like, are people actually going to fall for this? Are people actually going to believe this?
Yeah, it's not that they're falling for it, it's that they do believe it. Is the thing. And then you're playing on those fears that they already have.
It's
about
2020, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's 2020.
Yep.
I don't know.
But what Alan was talking about, and that's what got me, was how we were talking about the difference between Haiti and Black Wall Street, and how she made the comparisons about the approach that they took with them being still being segregated and building their own, right? And they were used as kind of like this is the idea of how it should be, as far as what was in Booker T. Washington's eyes. And then the incident that happened where, everything completely got demolished. They killed, all of these Black people to really put them back in their place, to show them that you have no business here, basically. And I think that one of the things that was interesting that I read, because I hadn't read this before, was the actual build up to what happened when it was like months before, when they were getting these circulars that told them they need to get out of town and stuff like that. So it was like it was a setup. It was a setup for this whole elevator incident that
probably
never
didn't happen.
Caused it.
Right. To lead into how that went, right? But then you had Haiti, which was kind of like this other model, kind of along the lines of what Dubois was thinking, where they were integrated and working alongside the white people, and they escaped, fate. However, instead of going in and burning the buildings down, it was like, oh, we just voted to run, this highway
through the middle of your
community instead. Right. So you either get the most blatant, outrageous ways where we're attacked, or the more subtle ones that nobody really thinks about. It's like you can't win for.
They did that all over the U.S. with the freeway system and eminent domain. I mean, that's what my documentary was about in grad school. It was about how they did that in West Oakland. They built the Nimitz Freeway right through the center of a prosperous working class community and bifurcated it so that then people felt, my dad talks about in the documentary, you started to feel like you were in a lower part of the city, trapped over there behind this huge freeway. Like, how can you talk about community building, how can you feel like you're in a community when there's a huge freeway over your head? And then that enabled white flight to the suburbs, which is them now. We're going to leave the city to the Blacks and whatever the minorities need to be there, and we're going to go out to the suburbs and use the freeways. And so with no concern, they labeled West Oakland blighted, the city commission. And then they got that once it was labeled blighted, and they had eminent domain, and they paid some people to move out. Others, it was like kind of like, you got to move or you're just going to get bull at this point, because we're coming through with the freeway. So they did that all over, and so you can see they did that in Durham and I thought it was interesting when he talked about how they were less flashy about their wealth there, and maybe that was also a piece of why. Yeah, well, why they didn't get burnt up like Tulsa. He said in Tulsa they had the fancy homes and the, you know what I mean? They were kind of showing that they were super successful, and they came for them with burning down 18,000 homes and doing $2 to $3 million in property damage. So big numbers.
It's like, well, we're going to. It's like, because y'all, Haiti, y'all weren't as flashy as Greenwood. We won't kill y'all.
Let you slowly decline. Because they said as soon as the Black businesses went out, then here they come.
Yeah, right behind me.
I think that it is very thought out, and it's very, some of these presidents they were talking about, I was like, woo, Jesus. I never knew that A Birth of a Nation was the first film ever shown in the White House. I never knew that. And, to think about that history and that legacy. I even think about that sometimes.
Yeah.
With
at the White House.
When I talk about like Booker T. Washington, and people talk about Trump and the outpouring of obvious racism or stuff that he's labeled with. I also think about, in my mind, that they're two sides of the same coin. So that I don't think that I'm not pessimistic, but I still am like hyper vigilant about the agenda of even whoever's in office, because Biden has some legislation that he's done that's questionable over time in terms of Blacks. And I don't, so I never want to just go, oh, yay, now we've got these Biden and Kamala, they're going to save us. You know what I mean? It's like, they just kind of sometimes do their dirt in different ways.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? Whereas maybe Trump's so crass and arrogant that he doesn't care about speaking freely and not protecting our feelings. But even Obama did a lot of drone killing in office, a lot of war, a lot, you know what I mean? So it's like, if the person in office is still down with the overall overarching agenda, which is maintaining white supremacy and putting faces on things so that we feel like we're getting progress, but really the overall system is still the same.
Right.
We'll let Kamala through, which is like similar to we'll let Booker T. Washington through. We'll let some of you through so that it looks like we're working
Progress
with
is
you.
being made.
Huh?
Never mind. Never mind. I was saying
Right.
how you said that we'll the way things are positioned, or the way things white supremacy position, it makes it looks as if we're making progress by accepting Booker T. Washington or by accepting Kamala Harris. But we all know that behind the scenes that's not the case. It's kind of like puppets and the puppet masters, strings are
Right.
being pulled.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm almost
But yeah,
I'm
I mean,
almost finished with this.
And I wonder if we got complacent with that success we had in the early 1900s because of the way I mean, I don't know though. I don't
Yes.
know. It's hard. You think so?
I feel like, yeah, I think and not just that, we get complacent, period. Even when we see other people that we think made it, and we're like, oh, that could be me too, but you're not thinking about everything that's set up within the system that's still going to keep you in your place, regardless of whether you get to that point where you're attaining that level of wealth or status at the same time.
Yeah,
Right.
I had to have a discussion with a young lady regarding it, because we were just talking about a lot of the things we've discussed in various books we've read, as well as what you just brought up, because she brought up how Tyler Perry just became a billionaire, how he was homeless, and how she was trying to relate that to why blacks can't get to that point. But she didn't say that, but she implied it. What I should have said, and I didn't tell her this, is that number one, most people, regardless of their race, because they're not willing to put in that type of work, are not going to get where Tyler Perry's got. And number two, here's the thing, the system is still intact, and he can still only, I'm not going to say only go so far, but there are still challenges that he's going to face just being a black man alone.
Right. Oh, no. I completely agree, because, had it not been for Kasim and Keisha, he wouldn't have never even gotten that property, to be completely honest, because them white people wasn't trying to hear that. They were not. They were bringing up a lot of legal issues to try to block him on that.
Really?
Yeah, that is a Confederate army base, right? And the city of McDonough here in Georgia being sued for removing their Confederate monument from down in the square downtown.
The majority of the Henry County councils are black. That's why they being sued.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm confused. What is happening? Who's getting sued?
Yeah.
So Jessica, are
true.
you from Georgia?
It's true.
Yeah, I am.
What part of Georgia are you from?
I'm here in Clayton County.
All right, so in McDonough and Henry County, with all the outcries that's been taking place because of all the riots, one of the things that various states have been doing have been removing Confederate monuments. In the state of Georgia, allegedly, there is a law intact that says that you cannot vandalize nor can you remove a historical Confederate monument. But anyone that knows anything about the Confederacy knows that the primary objective of the Confederacy was to maintain and preserve slavery. And that's what the Confederacy and the Union fought over. It was over slavery and slavery alone, because it was over economic power and potential. And if I'm wrong, if there's something that need to be added, you all are welcome to correct me or tell me something that I'm not including. But anyway, to get straight to the point, the city of McDonough decided to remove the Confederate monument, which is in the square, in that circle that you see, where you see the seats and the park. And I was just there not too long ago. The day they decided to remove it, I think a lot of the people that are part of the Confederacy was standing in the square, and they didn't want it to remove it. They removed it anyway. So what's happening is they're currently being sued.
Oh, for removing it.
Yeah, but but what I didn't realize what
Yeah,
Yoshunda
because
said,
you know,
because
Kim, right out.
Jordan, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was saying what I didn't realize, and this is something Yoshunda said, they're being sued because the majority of their council is African American.
Okay.
Hmm. And you know, Kemp passed that the last legislature. He pushed that bill through to protect
I believe
the
it.
remaining Confederate monument.
I so believe it.
Here we are.
Honestly, I don't
But
know what. Oh, go ahead.
No. But no, what DeAndre was getting at, and the same thing Nandi was just talking about, is we know, you know, the whole issue of why they were fighting, but what they were doing and have been doing since and still continue to do, because DeAndre, you know, we had this conversation when I had to put the protest together for them rescinding the Confederate holiday for our local, our county and city officials, but they still try to push this romanticized idea about what the Civil War was really fought about. And, you know, that came about from the movies like you saw with Gone with the Wind, and also the textbooks that the Daughters of Confederacy were pushing to be in the schools to teach this different version of it being about state rights and not about slavery. State rights was about slavery. That's the thing that they don't tell you. But they essentially still hold on to that idea, and that's what they keep trying to push when they try to defend these different monuments. You know, it's my heritage, it's history. You know, it wasn't about slavery. So they still continue with this same rhetoric when we all know that not to be true. So,
Right.
I think one of the interesting things, Nani, that you were touching on was when we were talking about how they attacked Greenwood outright and then did it more subtly with Haiti. But she was talking about, you know, throughout American history, there have been several examples of majority groups reacting violently when their economic power has been threatened. And it's called that theory of host group dominance, that holds that the host group or majority group should benefit most if any money is to be made. Those groups that are not dominant or host groups must occupy positions that the dominant group neglects so as not to compete with them for major business profits. And she says lower status groups can compete for scraps or for middle positions, but must not occupy the most profitable rungs of the business sector. Okay, for example, the state of California passed laws against Japanese businessmen after they became economically successful. Land rights held by Blacks during Reconstruction were another example. Native Americans were likewise expelled from their land when oil was discovered on it. So she was saying what happened with Tulsa and with Haiti basically was an example of the theory of group dominance, that, you know, no matter what, they're going to find a way.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not benefiting from it.
Right. They're not, I think that ties back into this idea of entitlement and superiority that just gets reinforced throughout society. And, you know, as I was reading this, and this is might be my own issue coming through, because let me just say first, I don't have a problem with racist mixing or any of that. But within the construct of a white supremacist society, I really would like to find some books about this transition from Black community right? Upliftment, businesses working together, building the Black family up, coming out of slavery, to a strong propensity by Black men to want to date outside of their race. And I really want to get into when did that happen? Because to me, the white woman is sitting, in a position where throughout slavery, she's just kind of silently accepting it, all of this. I feel like she's benefiting from a position of power and status in the house. She has Black women working as her maid or her nursemaid for her children. They talk about Black women being malnutrition from the amount of work they had to do during that time, and that being, complicit in Madam T.J. Walker's rise to needing these hair products, which was also to assimilate and look more white, that Black women were willing to try to take on these, straightening techniques. So I'm just wondering, because it seems like it starts happening all within there, and that after the push and the cohesiveness and all moving up to the 60s, and then there seems like there's some kind of split. And I just don't know if you guys have any thoughts about that either. I mean, I don't want to get too deep into it, but it's something that I think about when I see, I often have Black male friends that are commenting about Black issues, or even in my own family, or really passionate about Black Lives Matter and the position of Black people, but then they've married they're not with none of them are with Black women. So I'm just wondering, what is that about? And you see this more in California too than like in the South, I would say, probably. Right? You see.
Well, I mean, it's very noticeable here in the South, surprisingly, given how given the racial climate of the South is very surprising. It's not rare, I should say. I think the rarest thing I see is, and this is not even as rare as it used to be, is Black women dating white men. Now,
more popular.
Well, it's becoming more popular than it's ever been.
Yeah, definitely.
And TV shows and certain TV ads, and I do not watch TV, I've noticed they're pushing this type of stuff.
Yeah, they are now.
To address what you said, I think that started, I want to say, close, because there's a movie about that during the Civil Rights Movement where some woman was locked up for wanting to date some white man, and they had to go to court. I don't know the name of the film. I know it came out probably about 3 to 4 years ago. I still can't recall it, but I think it probably occurred during the Civil Rights Movement leading into the 70s and the 80s, because if you know, Quincy Jones, I think, is married to somebody white, and I think they was together even before their daughters were born, and he's like, what, 80 something now. But the thing is, because, and this is the part that media has played. Media portrays Black women as whorish and slutty, and just these sexually promiscuous beings that you can do whatever you want with, and they're willing to do they're willing to do whatever with you. I'm not saying that's what it is, because I know you are, and I know that's not the case. That's just the media's portrait of you. White women, on the other hand, are portrayed as sexually pure and innocent, and it's just because, and that's just it's the psyche that Black men. It's something that the media is portraying, and for the most part, and I just think from a Black man's perspective, because of the issues and challenges and problems that Black and white, well, Black men and Black women have had over the years, or have all the time. A lot of times that Black men think that maybe this is better. Let me try something different, because it seems that all Black women are the same. They like to argue and fight and these issues and things like that. And I just would rather not deal with it. But the fact of the matter is, and that's not even the case. A lot of times men go in relationships seeking certain things, and they don't realize that whatever you're seeking, that there's something behind it, and there's something that comes with that. So don't have a hidden agenda when you're dating. That's why I'm very, very conscious about dating now. And you could say one or two things wrong, and from that moment forward, I will have lost all interest that I probably had, even want to talk to you. But anyway, that's one of the main reasons. But then a lot of times when Black men get in those relationships and they realize the discrimination that they have to go against, because I know interracial couples that have had to go through hell dating one another because of the racism, and a lot of the times it's from the white side of the family.
Uh,
But yeah, that's part of what it is. I've never dated outside of my race ever. I just know people who have, and primarily because I'm not attract. I'm only attracted to Black women. I just can't see myself dating no other type of female.
mhm,
So
mhm.
there's
But
nothing against nobody else, but I'm just not attracted to no other type of women. That's not to say they're not beautiful. That's not to say they're not worthy of being with somebody. That's just simply to say I'm not attracted to them.
Yeah, your taste.
Yes, ma'am.
when
Yeah, and
and
I mean, you got even some that'll play in the pond, but will never will never marry one. I had a friend like that. Like when I tell you he played, but he specifically always said he would only marry a Black woman. So there are some that do play like that,
Mhm.
but decide that they're only going to marry Black women. And then there are the ones that's what they prefer, you know?
Uh-huh.
And but I agree
I
with DeAndre that the media has a lot to do with how Black women are viewed overall.
I
Mm.
honestly I don't understand. Like, okay, so I never understood why Black men were so against dating Black women or thought that we were so ugly, because it's amazing how we were good enough for you when you had nothing. But I noticed that the more power you get or the more money you get, that's when you start dating outside of your race and you say you're upgrading. But why is it
Mm.
that we can help you get somewhere, but when you get there, we don't reap the benefits? Other races do. Like, I don't understand how you're unattracted to somebody. You came from a Black person. Are you saying your mom is ugly? Like, it doesn't make sense to me, the
Mhm.
kind of thing like that. And then it's like, I feel bad kind of, because I say in my mind, like, I don't want to date a white guy. I mean, it's weird. I couldn't look at his skin next to me every day and be like, and like I would freak out a little bit, like when I woke up. But and I feel wrong because I'm like, you know what? Love is love. You give everybody a chance. But why is that other people get to have preferences, but I don't know.
Right, right. And it might be too. Some of mine is, I mean, it's based on my own experience. It's based on coming up from California, which is a different place, you know what I mean? But, and even things, you know, I just find that I feel like, you know, it is changing. Like you see more white men dating Black women now. It's even being pushed, like DeAndre said, in the media. And I don't know what that's about, but I see it being kind of promoted now, where I never really saw it before in commercials and TV shows and things like that. But,
I
you
think I
know,
know what it's about.
coming up, even, you know, and even within the Black community, it was like the guys at Howard, you know, I was dismayed when I found out that kind of like the beauty paradigm went from the girls who, of course, were mixed with something, were at the top at Howard, and then it kind of went in light or light eyes or things that are other than Black. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's not that it's not beautiful, but it just started to make me question. I don't see Japanese men in large groups putting Hispanic women as their top ideal. It's still going to be a Japanese woman. Or I don't see white men doing that. There's, you know what I mean? And so then, like you're saying, what Jessica was saying, so then when we have Black men becoming successful actors, movie stars, whatever, athletes, musicians, whatever, and then they want to so-called upgrade, or this attitude that the Black woman is angry, or I'm like, where is that coming from? You know what I mean? Where did that start to come from, that we became angry and problematic
Well,
and difficult?
number one, the media, And number two, the years of sexual exploitation and years of being degraded and not having no type of coping mechanisms to deal with that, no type of counseling,
Mm-hmm.
number one. And I would also say regarding what you just said about you don't see Japanese men putting Hispanics at the top of their
Beauty paradigm.
beauty paradigm in terms of who they're gonna date. Here's the thing: you have to understand that African Americans, for the most part, we're the only race that don't know who we are. We don't have any self knowledge whatsoever. For most of
Mhm.
us, the most we know about ourselves, we were taught by a group of people and a system that enslaved us and took away any of that. So it's like we're trying to fight for a sense of identification, but we're looking for it in the wrong place. We're looking for the very thing that they gave us that they used to enslave us in the first place. And that's
Mm.
why we think the way we do. That's why we have the outlook that we have. Japanese, although Japanese did go through, or many Asians went through their traumatic experiences. For the most part, they know who they are, they
Mm-hmm.
own who they are, and no one can take that from them.
Mm-hmm.
We've never been able to fully regain what was taken.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. I was watching y'all know what I'm trying to say. That movie. That movie. I was
I love
watching
that movie.
That movie.
the one on Hulu, Hair, Bad Hair, good
Oh, no, not a heroine.
you know what I'm talking about, the horror movie.
I saw
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
I didn't watch it. My daughter watched it. She said it was funny.
It was good, and I like how Blair Underwood's character did say, there's
You
a
talk,
lot we'll never know because history isn't taught. Our history is taught from our conquerors, basically. So like
Mhm.
they're not going to keep our culture alive, so we'll never regain what we lost. Like, and that's the saddest part about it. I'm sure there are like a few people left from probably each tribe or somewhere in Africa, like with the last remnants of our culture, and we won't even know who they are. We'll never find them, and
I
it's
just
just go ahead.
go ahead, finish.
No, that was it. I mean, it's a sad thing. So I don't know if we'll ever get our cohesion back because we'll still never know who we are. And even in Africa, there were still a lot of different cultures and everything like that. But I don't know.
Right.
Well, I slightly disagree only because the information and knowledge is out there. Because if you look, so here's the thing: during the Atlantic slave trade, we know that for the most part, we came from Western and Central Africa, countries like Nigeria, Guinea-Bissau, Niger, the Gambia, Ghana, and hold on, Liberia. So countries like that, if you go back and look at those countries and look at the early history of them, many of those people were kings and queens and monarchs and scientists. So we know that if that's where we come from and that's who those people were prior to slavery, because the American school system is going to teach you that the only thing you've ever been and ever will be is a slave. That's what the movies teach as well. But here's the thing: that's the starting point right there is what I can say. So there are resources that can help go back to that point. That's not to say you're gonna do what Alex Haley did. I don't know if he fully did that or not, because you all know he got sued in the 70s right after they came out, because there's a book called The African that tells the exact same story that he told in Roots.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mm,
I didn't know that.
me either.
That's why
Not a stolen history story.
yeah, the name of the book is The African. I can't think of the guy's name.
It's okay.
But
We Google everything.
but even if you think about it, we're still the only people that literally cannot trace our ancestors back person by person like somebody from Japan could. We
Yeah,
don't even know. We were so displaced in this, and there were so many secrets, people, so many rapes. We don't even know if we can go all the way back to find out where we came from. Like like of course you got the ancestry DNA thing, but I don't even trust that, to be honest. But I mean, I don't know. Like I feel like I can never, all of us can't fully reach back to where we actually rooted from, what that culture was about. We can guesstimate, but we can't get that back.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, I think it's and I talked about that before about doing the ancestry DNA. I think it's worth a try. Of course, you're not going. It's not going to be like, oh, so go to Ghana and you can find your ancestors on such and such street. You know what I'm saying? But I
Yeah.
think it can get you as close as it possibly could.
Such and such.
Right. Generally.
I don't understand how they can analyze all the information just from your saliva. So a part of me feel like they be fudging some of that. I mean, I guess I really have to look into it. But yeah, I don't know. I'm very mistrustful of things like that and the kits and stuff. I don't know.
Not necessarily. I think there's more stuff they know how to do that we don't know about. I just look at it as a part of everything else medically and scientifically related with how we're able to look at through microscopes and see, these little cells. So I don't discount that it may not be completely accurate, but I still think that it's the science is valid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth looking into. I'm gonna look into mine whenever I get the opportunity.
Yeah, I had been saying I was going to do it for the longest, and I really need to go ahead and do that because I want to be able to actually visit, the particular area at least.
So far, I only identified one ancestor that was a slave, a cousin, who was shipped from Alabama, and I had a great grandfather who, in the 1910s and 20s, was a sharecropper. I don't know whoever his grandfather or his great grandfather might have been the last generation. So I haven't been able to go very, very far.
Gotcha. Yeah, I started looking at my
But
history in the archives. I started looking at my history. Huh?
I was gonna ask because two of his daughters. I think two of my great grandfather's daughters are still around in their 90s. One of the things I plan on doing is interviewing them and recording it and just typing up a document and just passing it down for the next generation. So I wanted to ask, who's the oldest member of y'all families and how old are they? And do you talk to them regularly?
Mine's all passed on now.
Yeah. My great grandfather was the last oldest remaining, and he passed away 2 years ago. So,
but who's the next oldest?
For me, it would be my parents that are 77.
Oh, okay.
My grandmother almost made it to like 90, but all my grandparents are gone. I never met my mom's dad. He passed away before I was born. And my great grandfather lived to be really old, like almost, I think, 103. But I mean, that's past still before I was here.
Right. Yeah. So I don't have anyone past 90 anymore. My grandmother's in her 70s on my dad's side, but yeah, those are the only.
Well, maybe they know something.
Well, I did. The good thing is I did the same thing that you did. Talk to my grandfather when he was in the hospital and wrote some stuff down. That's how I learned that we weren't even supposed to be Joneses. We're Carmichaels.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, say what? Well, it was his father was a Carmichael, but his mother married another man and he took on his last name. So he essentially was a Carmichael, but he became a Jones. So that's already the disconnect there.
Yeah, but that grandfather, I never met him. He died in 1978. My
Mm.
grandmother told me that. And Ancestry.com, I was able to find out where they used to live. So Yoshunda, you know where the big chick is across right by that laundromat. In an apartment building adjacent from that, that's where they lived at years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes. He's also the grandfather of some
Yeah.
of our mutual relative.
I think it'd be interesting for everybody to try to,
Yeah.
trace their family.
A year or two ago, I went to the Georgia Archives right here down the street on Jonesboro, and I started trying to trace my dad's side. And it's kind of cool because you get to see their handwriting, like when they were writing in their census and all that stuff. But I didn't get too far because I was trying to find information. I had to call my dad, and I know that somebody was a railroad worker, but he died early. It got like a little bit confusing, and then I tried to go back and trace it, but they were closing, and I never went back. And so I need to, I guess, go back and actually try to do that, and probably do Ancestry and see if it'll help. But I didn't even know Georgia Archives kept all of that stuff, like their handwriting, all of it. I was just like, wow.
Mm.
Oh yeah, Yoshunda, before I get off, I will the chapter that's on civil rights, dreams, and I think economic nightmares, I will facilitate that.
That is,
I think it's the 4th or the 5th one. It's the 5th, Civil Rights, Dreams,